Hello, my name is Aiden Lowe, and for my final narrative project, I will be talking about our society's current situation involving its use of water. Water is a precious resource used by all living things and is the reason why life is able to exist on Earth. Currently, our use of water has been mismanaged, leading to the potential future water crisis. To start, Earth is known as the water planet. This is because more than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. Water is an essential resource for all living creatures. It's the fluid that makes up more than 70% of the human body. There are three different types of water that should be distinguished before going any further. Fresh water is categorized into groundwater and surface water. Surface water exists in lakes, rivers, ice caps, glaciers, ice sheets, and many other different forms. It exists on the top of the Earth's surface. Groundwater lies beneath the ground and holds the largest amount of fresh water. Saltwater consists of the ocean and contains salt, making it unsuitable for use. Drinking water is the resource we are quickly running out of, which is causing the current water crisis. The focus of the video will be mainly on drinking water and how we have been running out of it so quickly. For some statistics on Earth, the Earth is covered in 70% of water. 97.5% of this is made up by the sea, leaving 2.5% for fresh water. 1.75% remains in glaciers and ice caps. 0.75% of the remaining fresh water is what we draw our drinking water from. Even from this, 98% of this is inaccessible because it's in the form of groundwater that can't be reached. We are left with a pool of about 15,000 square kilometers for available use. Now that we have some background information out of the way, it's time for the big question. To what extent is our current water use sustainable? The content I will be covering in this presentation will be focusing on our present-day water source. I will go over the causes for the decline in our current water supply from the start of the 1900s to the beginning of the 2000s. The focus will then shift to our current situation and how our current water use is unsustainable. Rather than choose a specific place, I will be looking at this time period for a couple of reasons. The population during this time period has more than doubled, leading to a much larger demand for water. This has caused an overuse, leading to a decrease in the limited water supply. It's important to understand that this not only affects a certain part of the population, but is indiscriminate and will affect everyone in some way or another in the near future. Moving on, let's compare our past and present water supply. At the beginning of the 1900s, there were 9,000 cubic meters of water for one person per year. At the time, the population was much smaller and the demand for water reflected this. Since then, the water supply has dramatically decreased to 2,500 cubic meters for one person every year. This begs to ask the question, why and how has our water supply been decreasing at such a rapid rate? Before we start, let's define water scarcity. There are two different types. One is physical water scarcity caused by seasonal or environmental changes. This occurs when there isn't enough water to meet the demands of the ecosystem and humans. Economic water scarcity is caused by a lack of investment into water resources and poor water management. I will be examining the effects of economic water scarcity because it is the product of human action that can be reversed. There are many major causes in the decrease of water supply. First, water distribution problems. This is when there are difficulties in transporting water over large distances. When water sources are used up at a specific location, other solutions are needed to be found. Next are inadequate management from the government. The government is not able to be as effective as it can be because of the way it's broken down. They can't address water resources in an efficient way. Governments are broken down into separate departments, each one handling a different type of water, such as irrigation, drainage, sewage, and other types. These departments act independently of each other. When one department acts and creates a problem in the water supply, another department must act to provide a solution and fix the problem. A cycle is then created of a problem and solution created by human hands. This is inefficient because it doesn't directly address the cause, which never works out really. An example of this is the Aral Sea. Credit to MC for giving me the idea of using such a dramatic example of when the government should learn how to be efficient with its water use. Water was taken from the rivers feeding the sea and has left it without a source to replenish it. This has left the Aral Sea dried up almost completely. The purpose was to use the water for cultivation, which is land cultivation, which is no longer being supported. The picture of the Aral Sea can be seen as a representation of our planet's drinking water. Every year, we move closer to drying it up until our supply is almost completely gone. Agriculture is also a huge waste of water. Agriculture is an important aspect for human society. However, the techniques for irrigation of the land is highly inefficient, estimated to be less than 40%. This means that over half of the water being used for irrigation is being wasted. 60% of water isn't even making it to the crops. Water pollution will be discussed later, but the water has begun to become increasingly more contaminated from many different sources. Pesticides, untreated human wastewater, and industrial wastewater all lead to contaminated water, which can have long-term health effects and diseases. Tanya Stadelman's project, This Creek, is a great example that documents the effects of the contaminated water from industrial waste. Population growth and urban development continues to increase at exponential rates, and as urbanization grows, many surface water supplies are being exploited, leading to many places being considered under water stress. In order to sustain the growing population, water is being used for the production of food, shelter, and other commodities, placing an even greater strain on the already dwindling water supply. The class theme that these causes represent are the Anthropocene. While this is not a major theme in the class, our water overuse extends past degradation to our water supply, but affects the entire ecosystem of the planet. As we can see from the Aral Sea, we have made a major impact on the planet to the point that it is now being recorded in geological records. Our present water situation can now be examined because we have seen some of the root causes of water scarcity in the past. Many places in the world are being considered under water stress, which is when the demand for water exceeds the available amount during a certain period or when poor quality restricts its use. Before we cover some of the statistics, let's distinguish between basic drinking water and limited drinking water. Basic drinking water services are where it can be collected within 30 minutes, and limited drinking water services take more than 30 minutes. 1.4 billion people are using the basic drinking water service, while 206 million are using the limited drinking water service. These numbers represent the people that are using unsafe drinking water services. While there aren't many people using limited drinking water, the number only continues to increase due to the water scarcity that many countries are now having to face. Some statistics of the Earth are that 5.3 billion people, 70% of the population, use safely managed drinking water services, and 6.8 billion people used at least a basic service. 435 million people are taking water from unprotected wells and springs, and 144 million people are collecting untreated surface water from lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams. The statistics show that the majority of the world use safe methods for collecting and consuming drinking water. However, the population that we are concerned about are using untreated water and limited surface drinking water. These methods of collecting water risk the chance of contamination and require a lot of energy in order to get. I will next cover water pollution, but the amount of people using methods other than safely managed drinking water services numbers will continue to increase. The theme that the data represents is a crisis of the commons. Water is a common resource among all living things, but it has been overused to the point that we are now facing a water crisis. Within the next 10 years, half of the world will be living in water-stressed areas. Water pollution continues to increase. 2 billion people are facing drinking contaminated water, and our freshwater sources only continue to be contaminated with plastics, pesticides, and chemicals. Contaminated water is defined as untreated water that can transmit diseases to humans, and as you can see, here are some of the pictured diseases that can be transmitted. It's estimated to cause around 485 deaths each year. The statistics show that we are on a downward trend in terms of water safety, and the report on water pollution supports this. The 2 billion people that drink contaminated water risk their health, violating the UN's rights to have access to fresh and clean water. These numbers will continue to increase and further decrease in our drinking water supply. While toxic uncertainty is something that applies to the entire project as a whole, water pollution specifically plays the biggest role. The countries that are affected by water pollution the most tend to be developing countries. When we discuss toxic uncertainty in class, four important pieces of information are taken into consideration: time, daily routine, information or authority, and slow violence. Water pollution occurs over the span of years, slowly increasing to the point that it becomes unsafe to consume. Daily routines are not changed, as information from the authorities remain unheard due to a lack of care or knowingly being withheld. People unknowingly consume polluted water because no immediate effects are seen until they are diagnosed with a disease and it becomes too late. And if they do know, there is a high chance that they may still continue using the water because there are no other available sources. The continued exposure is an example of slow violence, as it is a long-term effect. As I mentioned earlier, Tanya Stadelman's project documents the effect of water pollution in America. We would like to believe that we aren't affected, but it isn't true because it affects everyone. Our drinking water supply is quickly becoming contaminated, and changes must occur. Some places that are facing water scarcity are the following. The top 5 countries are Yemen, Libya, Jordan, the Western Sahara, and Djibouti. The regional characteristics that are being seen in the most common countries are arid or semi-arid regions facing physical water scarcity, rapid population growth, and underdeveloped countries, which are economic water scarcities. Some states that are facing water scarcity in the United States are Oregon, due to a drought, Washington, California, Nevada, and Idaho. There are many challenges that we must face in order to combat water scarcity. The WHO has laid out several of these challenges. In addition, an independent case study was done to analyze syndromes leading to water scarcity. Their study was done by looking at 22 other case studies and comparing the data. According to the study, all syndromes could be explained by a limited set of causal factors that fell into 4 categories: demand changes, supply changes, governance systems, and infrastructure technologies. These syndromes represent common attributes that occur in the places that have already faced water scarcity and, as such, are useful indicators. These challenges must be overcome if there are ever to be viable solutions for water scarcity, which we're developing at the current time. Our society has been dealing with water scarcity for quite a while, and as such, many solutions with the goal of solving water scarcity prioritize equitably maximizing economic and social welfare without compromising ecosystem functioning. Some future water solutions that I feel are the most promising are the ones listed here. Our irrigation system must be improved, and the drip technique perfected in Israel shows promising results and increases in effectiveness. Preserving freshwater ecosystems and taxing water will be able to give our water supply some time to replenish. Recycling wastewater and infrastructure investment will also be able to make our water systems more effective. In conclusion, our water is a scarce resource and our current use is unsustainable. Soon we will be well below the 1,500 cubic meters per person per year mark. Fortunately, society has seen this as becoming one of the biggest problems in the next decade, and degrowth has started to become popular to help relieve these problems. It's not too late to start making changes in our water use, and climate justice efforts can help aid these changes. Thank you, and as we say, take back the tap.